Welcome to Sound Bites. I'm your host, Jennifer Chandler, and I'm here today with Marshall Bartlett of Home Place Pastures and Chef Jimmy Gentry of The Lobbyist. This week, we'll be talking about Hill Country Boucherie at Home Place Pastures on September 7th. Sound Bites is the Daily Memphian's weekly food, drink, and dining podcast. You can tune in on WYXR Radio every Thursday at 11 a.m. or listen wherever you get your podcast, iTunes or Spotify, or listen at dailymemphian.com. If you are listening on WYXR Radio, up next you can listen to Sidebar with Eric Barnes. But let's get started talking about this really cool event that is going to be happening down in Como, Mississippi. Marshall and Jimmy, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Always.
So, Hill Country Boucherie at Home Place Pastures. This event's been going on a couple of years, hasn't it, Marshall?
Yes, it took a hiatus during COVID, so we're pretty sure this is the 8th one. There's a little bit of debate because it's changed forms, especially in the early days, but we think this is the 8th one that we've done in this format.
Okay, so for everyone that's listening that may not know what a boucherie is, can you define what that term is or explain what this event is?
Yes, I will do my best. It's a French word, and it kind of comes from a Louisiana kind of Cajun tradition of harvesting an animal and then,
Having
eating,
a party.
having a party
afterwards.
and eating every part of that animal, So we were inspired by that tradition, but wanted to add sort of a hill country, like North Mississippi vibe to that same idea, where there's a lot of picnics and parties and yard parties that typically occur around Labor Day. And that's sort of what I grew up in my area going to. And the fife and drum picnics that Otha Turner had and just north of us, and where they would cook whole goats. That was the thing on the menu there. So we just try to combine all of that really rich kind of Southern food history of these different cultures, all based around the same idea of celebrating nose-to-tail eating, using every part of the animal, kind of that rural resourcefulness, and the creativity required to do that, and throw in the great music that highlights, both of those areas. My area, Como, Mississippi, has a really rich musical history for just a small town in the hill country, Mississippi. It's pretty amazing how many great blues musicians, gospel musicians came from our area.
Which I'm going to butt in on this one and say, the first year that I was there, and after we got done with the cooking portion, and you walk over to where the party is, and literally it's just a party, and you see that damn bus cut in half, right? And the band on it, all of a sudden everything makes sense. And it takes a whole nother level. Like, I showed up for this cooking portion, but I'm hanging around for the party.
Exactly. So it's just a really rich kind of mix of food, music, community, celebration, creativity. It's a lot of elements that I think inspire a lot of us in this industry, whether it's food service or farming, local agriculture, music, but just kind of this special sense of place and time that we try to create. And it's totally without pretense, and it's magical out there. So it's just kind of a vibe that you get when you're at this party. It's really special, and that's what keeps it going, because it is a lot of work and hard to put on. So I'm trying to remember that, especially here we are 2 weeks leading up. I got a lot to do, but it's just
when you pull up
time.
And you see Marshall and John just moving, literally like, hey, you got 20 people throwing hay, and John's driving a tractor, and Marshall's taking crap from one place to the other. All of a sudden you realize, and I'll relate it to something that we do, which is the underground. Nobody understands how much trouble goes into something that is so freaking small in scale, right, of what you do on a daily basis. But there's so much, and it all goes without saying, but
it's very homegrown.
And I guess for everybody listening, if you didn't catch this earlier, guests to this event, it's happening on the farm. They're getting to see where the pigs that are being cooked are raised. And do you offer tours of the farm during this event?
We do, yeah. We do a farm tour around 10 a.m. and then I take the chefs, all the people that are, kind of there to help put the event on, and we do a plant tour. So one of the really special things about Home Place Pastures is that we also do our own harvesting and processing on site in a federally inspected facility, and that's pretty rare. It's only a few folks in the country that are crazy enough to attempt all of that in the same place. So we're able to showcase that too. And again, that ties in the whole theme, right? Like, we're there to celebrate, not only the way that we farm and raise and produce this meat, which our chefs are a huge part of, supporting that and kind of translating it to the public. But also that whole animal utilization, right? Because we're harvesting these animals, and it's kind of to fully respect them and to make it work, we have to utilize everything nose to tail. And so kind of tapping into those old food traditions to rediscover those neat recipes and ways to do that.
Yeah, and it is really cool to see what the chefs that participate in this event do with these lesser cuts of meats. I shouldn't say lesser, more not
lesser
common,
known,
lesser known, not commonly used.
Well, that's the cool part to me is the fact that I'm sure at some point you'll talk about the whole sustainability and all that kind of things. You're taking parts from Marshall that are going to be hard to sell, and 98% of the population doesn't care to want. And he's giving them to us, and we have to make them palatable to the average person. So us taking and making something that we're actually using instead of holding up his freezer space, it makes sense all the way around. It's not just, him throwing pork loin at us and going, hey, have fun. It's actually, you have to think about it.
Yeah, and we're going to take a step back for a second for people listening that may not be familiar with this event. So one of the pretenses of this event, Marshall, you might want to explain more about this, but basically you invite chefs that use your products on their menus regularly to come in and for the dinner, and they're given a challenge. It's a contest, and they are assigned an
odd cut. We'll say.
An odd cut. They compete. It's a pretty fierce competition, I think. It's everybody's friends, but everybody wants that bragging right to say they won this event.
We're competitive by nature.
Yeah. And then the dinner is people get to try these great things that have been creative. Mm-hmm. Did I explain that correctly?
That's perfect. Yeah, we actually have a raffle. On this year, we just printed out all the cut names, printed out all the restaurant names, and I just taped them, pulled them out of a hat and taped them to the wall, one at a time, so it's totally random. And then the chefs have to take that cut, whether it's pig hearts or pigtails or beef bones, and make a dish, 300 small portions that go in those, very photogenic little bamboo boats. And so, to me, the event is fascinating, and the whole space really in kind of fine dining world is fascinating because chefs are really interested in those culinary traditions. And so we're challenging them to take these odd cuts and make it, palatable, like Jimmy said, or delicious. But to do that, they go back to these really old rural traditions where people just living out in the country had to figure out how to cook this stuff and make it taste good because they couldn't waste anything. Waste was like a mortal sin. I mean, you couldn't afford to do it. And so it's just sort of this full circle. Now that's really up to this fine dining kind of high-end chefs to rediscover these foodways that were invented out of basic poverty and necessity, back in the day. And so there's just a lot there. There's a lot of richness. We're celebrating that and kind of reintroducing all those concepts of nose to tail, no waste. And to me, the really fun part of it, you mentioned the competition, but these guys are good. I mean, the food is, people read the description and I don't want to eat. And then they see it and then their mouth starts watering and they eat it. This is the best thing I ever had, So it's really fun. Again, just that creative kind of competitive spirit and watching kind of the glow in everyone's face at the dinner as they eat through this menu, just kind of buffet of all this stuff
that they would never touch in their life. But since we put it in something cool, now all of a sudden it's, oh yeah.
Yeah, and then they vote. So the format, everyone each team presents these little bamboo boats that are only 1 to 2 ounce portions. And you go through with your tray and you get a boat from each team and they're numbered. And there's a menu key so you can read and the dish description is on the table too. But when you sit down so you can remember you have it all in front of you. And then at the end, you vote on your favorite dish, and we tally it up and announce it right before everyone kind of second lines over about a couple hundred yards away to the farm shed with the cut away bus. The boucherie dinner is in my parents' yard, by the way. So it is very much at our home, and they're so gracious to allow me to do this. But that's why we've kind of resisted a lot of folks wanting to, coming up to me at the event or afterwards or contacting us man, we got to blow this up. This is the coolest thing. It's I don't want to blow this up. It's going to ruin it.
Do you realize that's my parents' house right there?
Yeah, we're in my folks' backyard. So very homegrown.
We know Jimmy Gentry with the Lobbyist will be participating. We're going to talk to him in a minute about what his cut of meat this year is. But how many chefs are participating?
It's 15 teams this year. Okay. So typically we have 15 to 20 teams. The later we get into September with football season and fall starting, we're trying to do that to kind of make it a little more pleasant for the guests because it can get really hot when you do it at the end of August. But the more the scheduling conflicts kind of kick in for chefs, and they're sacrificing their time basically unpaid to come do this. So this year we have 15 teams from the Memphis area. I always hate this because I'm going to forget somebody, but like Buster's Butcher is participating. Our good friends there to support us. Our buddies that run Secret Smash Society are going to be there. Jimmy is obviously a big Memphis participant. Bane's Barbecue is going to be there this year.
That's the first time for them.
Yeah, it's their first time. So just a lot of, and there's more that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. There's a lot of them to keep track of, but just a lot of great folks in town that support our farm, but also just want to be a part of this vibrant food community that we have here that are going to be in town.
So Jimmy, how many years have you participated in this?
Actually, Mitchell, Buster's. Mitchell got me involved right about the time that we were going full board on the charcuterie side of the Paradox thing. So that would be 2020-ish, right? Because I decided.
And for those who don't know, explain what that is a little bit louder. So is it charcuterie by Paradox?
Charcuterie by Paradox. So
because you're making some.
So basically, all of our charcuterie is Home Place. So it doesn't matter if it's beef or pork; it's 100% their product. Anyway, so Mitchell got me involved then because during COVID, I had this great idea that. Why don't we sink all of our money into something that I get no profit off of for months and months and months later, right? It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Charcuterie.
Sounds familiar.
It's a fantastic business plan. Anyway, so, 4 years later, still doing the charcuterie thing, but, we still use them for all of our catering bacon, all of our most of our meat in general, and then at the restaurant as well, because one place produces for the other place.
And y'all do some like salami type
all of that.
Curing like speck. You do bacon,
speck, prosciutto, a ton of bacon. Most of the smaller places that you would know around town.
Y'all wholesale do a lot of other Memphis.
Public, not Public, Knife Bird. I think we got one or two at Public. I'm not sure at Bistro. Gray's does a lot.
Are y'all
Gray's
at
Fine Cheeses?
Yeah.
Mendenhall.
Are you at Cameo too?
Cameo. Yeah. So all of that. I mean, we do that, and then Gray's has actually started taking us to Nashville.
Oh wow, that's exciting because they have 2 locations there now.
Franklin and Yep.
That's fun. Okay, well let's go back to.
I digress.
This event. I know, but I wanted you to give a shout out to because
you're fine.
I've had the charcuterie that you've made and it's excellent and I want people to know about it. So that's why I was like, tell us a little bit more. You kind of skimmed over it. So what kind of meat do you have
this year?
This year?
Beef heart again, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, you've had it before.
So
2 years ago.
2 years ago, it was Cole and I. Cole had pig heart. I had beef heart.
And that's Cole Jeans?
Yep.
Who has Kinfolk?
Kinfolk, and they participate under Secret Smash, but yes.
And they're opening Hard Times.
Right, the New Deli.
He actually won that year. That was
Pig Hearts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
they did a little yakitori thing. It was really good.
And then last
year,
year,
solid dish.
Austin Summerall, White Pillars.
White Pillars won last year.
He won with pork hocks.
Oh, wow. So can you give us, I guess it's a competition. You're probably not going to share too much information about what you're doing this year, or can you share?
Trade secrets.
It doesn't matter whether or not I share it or not. It matters whether or not it's good or everybody likes it. So it doesn't really matter. We're going to do pupusas.
Okay.
So if anybody knows what's another, think of an empanada or something along those lines, right? Or a arepa.
Yeah.
Arepa is a better example. So think of an arepa, except further south. So basically, we're just going to take the pig heart, clean them, because if you know anything about breaking down any of those meats, that portion has a lot of sinewy parts. Grind it, season it, a little bit of cheese, make the mixture, and instead of the pupusas, the different part about that is you make like a little, almost like you're making a dumpling in your hand. Fill it with whatever meat, a little bit of cheese, then you close it, and then you roll it flat, and then you just kind of like pan fry it. Okay. So
Sounds good.
Sounds interesting.
So a little bit of fat and a little bit of cheese. I figure that'll hit most of the people.
People will like that.
Yeah, and the frying. Yeah.
So what was
let's start with that.
Yeah.
like, were you, when you get, since you've had this before, and if, when you get an assignment, or you find out what is your cut of meat, do you normally just be like, okay, or do you go, oh, or, do you get excited? What's your kind of initial reaction? Or what has been the one you've been the most scared of?
Honestly, the first couple of years, when I was really scared to get anything bone related, because the only thing that pops into your mind automatically is soup, right?
Yeah,
what the hell are you going to do with
broth.
bones?
Yeah.
And it's 100 degrees. You're not going to stand out there and make, freaking ramen for everybody and have them, sweat the entire time. So that one's the one that's always like, and I say this and next year he's going to give it to me.
Yeah. Totally random.
But that to me is one of the hardest ones. 3 years ago when we got heart before, we played with it for about a week beforehand to figure out how to make it more palatable for the average person, because it is super irony.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Especially
an organ meat. Yeah.
It's a strong flavor. And
especially when you get into beef heart more so than pork heart. So I found out that if you do almost like a brown sugar cure for about an hour and you circulate it, all that ironiness goes away. It
Really?
is 100%. You would not be able to tell it from a piece of meat.
Really?
From a piece of organ meat.
Okay.
And when you sear it, since it's been kind of like quote unquote brined or circulated with a little bit of brown sugar, it gets a great caramelization, which you would get from, a steak, right? If you pan sear a good steak. So it creates two parts. It gives it a little bit of sweetness, takes away the ironiness. It's kind of cool. So we're going to do that technique again on the front end. And I think we're just going to grind it.
Whether it's you, Jimmy, that can answer this, or Marshall, have you seen this? Has anyone that's participated in this event and had a lesser known cut meat that's not normally served on a menu, have you seen anyone actually take any of these and
turn it into something?
Turn it into a regular menu item?
Actually, I've seen maybe I shouldn't tell on Austin for this, but I've seen the opposite so Austin at White Pillars, he won last year. Yeah, he won last year.
And where's that restaurant?
I'm sorry, it's in Biloxi. It's on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. So he buys a whole hog, like a whole full hog from us every other week. And he uses it for several different things. He's really, that whole animal utilization is a big part of a lot of chefs' missions. And so he had this really good pork hock dish. And so he just kind of formatted that for so he got really lucky on that draw. And then, I have seen people, especially at the boucherie, when they're looking at the cuts that other people are cutting, we do the plant tour, we go through the whole process. But when we're looking at carcasses, during that tour, chefs will be like, man, I really love messing with this. I want to get like 20 pounds of beef belly a week, So it can really start to get everybody thinking. And I think, obviously that when everyone's all together and we're having this good time, that creativity really kind of spikes. And I think it's re-inspiring for all of us. And it's certainly like, we get back to the grind after that. But it is cool to see some of those cuts start to kind of find homes in some of the menus afterwards. And in Austin's case, he already had it on the menu.
Well, that was a wonderful side benefit.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Daily Memphian Sound Bites with me, Jennifer Chandler, and today we're talking with Marshall Bartlett of Home Place Pastures and Jimmy Gentry of The Lobbyist. If you're tuning in on WYXR, keep listening for the Sidebar with Eric Barnes after this. If you're listening through your podcast app, be sure to subscribe. You can also find our other Daily Memphian podcast, The Sidebar with Eric Barnes about art, culture, and more, Grizzlies Pod with Drew Hill and Chris Harrington, Behind the Headlines Podcast Edition, and On the Record, an occasional political podcast with Daily Memphian legend Bill Dries. So I wanted to kind of step back from the event a little bit and talk about regenerative farming and Home Place Pastures. So, the buzzword used to be sustainable farming, and now it's regenerative farming. And you were just giving me, before we started this conversation on air, you were giving me a great explanation of what the difference is. Can you chime in so everyone can hear that?
Yeah, sure. And again, buzzwords are buzzwords, a little bit of eye rolling, but we try to find really simple concepts and ways to boil down kind of the complexity of food and food production so that everyone kind of can understand it easily. And there are a lot of pioneers, a few decades ago that started this notion of sustainability. So industrial farming, kind of monocropping certain crops and putting a lot of inputs, chemicals, fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, that has a lot of degrading aspects, topsoil loss, it's polluting. So that kind of has this diminishing connotation, like we're losing something. So the reaction to that was we're going to figure out how to sustainably farm, which has a connotation of you being able to do it indefinitely into the future because it's better practice, right? So it's better for the environment. So you're supporting the soil, it's supporting the food that we're all eating. But that didn't really go far enough to a lot of people. So they're like, we're really not trying to just sustain. What we're really trying to do is improve, is to take, farming measures that are actually regenerating soil health and regenerating a lot of these cycles of nature to make our, clean up our watershed, clean up our air, sequester carbon, So that's when the regenerative thing started. I don't know exactly when, but I right when I, started doing this a decade ago, it was sort of the new edgy term. And now it's been really, it's kind of ubiquitous, like big corporate food is using it, which is always a little like, come on. But, every concept that these, thought leaders and innovators come up with to try to describe, something that's different than what the industry is doing, the industry ends up co-opting as soon as it becomes something the consumers are looking for. And you just see this trend, and then we got to come up with the next way to describe it to differentiate ourselves. But regenerative is the term now, and that's kind of the brief.
Perfect example is big business buying anything that has the word farm on it and just plastering that on the label. It's still, I think I saw this thing the other day that 98% of all the bacon produced in the United States is mass produced, which actually has, they're able to use words like naturally flavored and all of this. And it's
a
all
lot of very empty label claims. Yeah. And it's very confusing for customers.
Yeah. Because, you're taking a pork belly, you're barely brining it, and when even if you don't like nitrates and you do celery juice or whatever the case may be, you're taking and barely injecting it. Their turn process on bellies is like next to nothing. It's like a day or something stupid.
Yeah, they vacuum tumble it. Yeah. They pull a vacuum and inject it. Yeah.
Where ours, or Benton's, right, which is a Tennessee product. We know this one. You take a belly, you let it sit for, 14 days in that cure, then you pull it, then you smoke it for a day. These are all natural things, whereas, 98% of the bacon that's produced by mass production that has this cool little farm name on it, only thing they're doing is injecting it and then putting it into almost like an oven kind of situation that sprays liquid smoke on it.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. Hey, you're changing how I'm buying bacon from now on, which I think we all need to listen to. Marshall, so a little bit about what Home Place Pastures is. I mean, you started this, you took a family farm about a decade ago, you were saying, your family's farm.
Yep.
And kind of gave it a little bit of a new life and a new focus.
Yeah, you can definitely say that.
And it's in Como, Mississippi.
It is.
And what kind of products, you're raising pig? I've been down there before. It's pigs and beef, correct?
Yeah, and some laying hens. So so I moved. The farm has been in my family for 5 generations, for 150 years. I grew up there as a row crop farmer. My dad grew cotton and corn, soybeans, commodity row crop. So I was in the spray rigs and the fertilizer rigs and the harvesting rigs, and that's how I grew up. But I love that lifestyle and love the connection to the land. I didn't want to farm that way. My father kind of became increasingly disenchanted with borrowing money every year, paying the input cost to big ag companies, seed, chemical, fertilizer, dealing with the weather all year. And then at the end of the year, your crop is only as valuable as what the commodity industry tells you it is, right? And you have no control over any of those factors. And you're not creating a product that is special that you can brand because it's a commodity. Your corn is the same as corn in Nebraska or overseas for that matter. So anyway, I was trying, I think, to convince myself I wasn't going to farm. My older siblings are off the farm. My parents were very generous and supportive and worked very hard to get us the opportunity to do literally anything else. So, I left for college and bounced around, but I think always my heart was on that place, and I wanted to figure out, it just felt like a cop-out to say, I'm not going to row crop farm, therefore I'm not going to farm. It's like there's got to be another way to take this generational place and do something with it that benefits the community and grows food a different way, where I can also be an entrepreneur and build a brand and connect with people instead of this kind of isolating commodity model. So at the tender age of 24, after 2 very fun years in New Orleans, I will say, I wish I'd maybe stayed a little longer. I moved home and started raising pigs on pasture. So we started with pastured pigs, but we knew we had, there were a lot of people struggling with the same thing I was struggling with. Generational farmers, even, older farmers who were tired of, the powerlessness they had in that commodity system. They wanted to do something different. They wanted to raise animals a different way, but play into some kind of premium market. And they knew that people were hungry for this. There's this new demand out there. Like, as a 23-year-old kid in New Orleans, I could walk into a Donald Link, John Besh, Emerald, steakhouse and get a deal on a menu just by kind of pitching the story for this company I was working with down there. So I knew there was a lot of demand, and there was farmers who, wanted to maybe tap into that. So you have like kind of this supply and this demand, but consumers do not want to go purchase livestock, right? They want to purchase tasty steaks and ground beef and sausages. So in order to connect those two things, you have to control the USDA, harvesting and processing. So we had the supply chain, we had the demand, and there's a ocean of problems and friction between connecting those things. But therein lies the opportunity, right, for an entrepreneur. So we thought, if we build the plant and we control that, we can really scale this and then kind of create this market opportunity for other small farmers we know in our area and connect that to the end consumer. So 10 years ago, moved home, started raising pigs on pasture, regenerative farming, moving them around, stacking functions, added cattle in as a big herbivore in our kind of farm system, feeding the pigs corn, whatever they deposit back on pasture fertilizes the soil, which grows the grass that the cows come eat, sort of emulating like, all the most fertile soils the earth has ever produced on Great Plains, massive herds of herbivores like bison, it's the iconic American, they'd be like 2 million in a herd, and they'd hit an area really hard and then move on. And so that kind of destruction and then recovery creates a lot of abundance. So we started doing all that, and we built the plant. And, I say I was naive at 24 because I thought the plant was going to solve all of our problems, but it's been enormously challenging to run that business. A ton of capital, a ton of overhead, a lot of staff, which I'm really proud of. We're able to create a lot of jobs, but just running all of those different systems in what we call vertically integrated, where you're kind of doing each step of the process at the scale and managing it, tightly enough to be profitable has been a real challenge. So 10 years later, we're still growing. We just expanded the facility, which we're going to showcase at the Boucherie. Added a big cold storage warehouse to do more shipping direct to consumers. So on our website, that's a really exciting way for us to be able to get this better protein into people's homes. We also have a restaurant and a butcher shop on the farm. We do events like this.
Restaurant rocks.
And we run like regional food service distribution. So it's just, a lot going on to make the enterprise work. But the kind of crux of all of that was just being able to connect people with these better farming practices and better protein.
I mean, it's amazing. And I have to tell you, I've been eating your products for a very long time at restaurants, like the Lobbyist. Yeah. Jimmy Gentry has been a supporter of Home Place for years. It's on lots of menus around town. So if you happen to see it on a menu, I suggest you order that menu item. And also consider going down if you can't make it to this event, which is on September 7th, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tickets are available online.
Yep.
At homeplacepastures.com.
That's it.
It's the same website you need to remember so that you can order your pork to be shipped to your house.
And grass-fed beef. Yep.
And grass-fed beef, exactly. But also consider a trip down to the farm to go check out the farm store and the restaurant, and because it's really a great experience to see and put that connection, that literal connection of where your food is coming from, and it will make you make a decision to taste something that's not only better for you and better for the earth, but in my opinion, tastes better.
Yeah, and I think, these platitudes around food, local, organic, like all these terms, these label claims, they all kind of go in one ear and out the other. We're so used to hearing it. But when you come down to the farm and you actually see the place, it has a much deeper impact. So I do encourage people not only to come to Home Place, but if you're worried about who to buy from or what these label claims mean, if you can buy from a place where you can physically go visit and meet the people doing it, you're probably safe. And we really encourage you to come down to Home Place. The store's open Wednesday through Sunday for lunch, and we do a steak dinner on Friday night.
Well, that's all the time we have for now. I think we could continue this conversation for much longer because there's so much to talk about. Marshall and Jimmy, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about this.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You can tune in on WYXR Radio every Thursday at 11 a.m. or listen wherever you get your podcast, iTunes or Spotify, or listen at dailymemphian.com.